Can you hear me? I'm speaking in full voice now. Hey, Riverrun, how's it going? So we're getting together this morning to actually go over a match from one of our drafts back actually exactly a month ago. I checked the dates on this draft log, and it's the 7th of March, and here we are, the 7th of April.
Perfect.
How time flies, you know? And I have with me today Mikujin, great community member, uh, and one of my mods, which is cool. And
Big claim to fame.
Mikujin, Mikujin is up in Madison, right?
Yep, I'm over in Madison.
And a big organizer of lots of cube events up there.
Yeah, it's myself and a buddy of mine, Dan, after CubeCon 1. I guess we kind of connected there. Like, I hadn't met anybody in the community in Madison before that. I just moved down here prior to COVID, so right in time to get locked down and meet no one. Um, but after that, we met up, and I've always loved Cube. He was a commander player that just kind of got into Cube through it, and we just started finding everybody in the Madison area. Like, and Madison's big for Magic in general. There's so many people that are here playing it in various levels. But we just started collecting everybody we could find that was playing Cube, interested in Cube, or might have even just wanted to try it. And so we've been building up the community here pretty good. And we are now, fighting a couple nights a week, Cube events. It's pretty exciting. And then everybody's getting really interested. So we have so many people in the community that are building their own cubes now. And it's tons of fun to see everybody's take on what a limited environment can look like.
Yeah, definitely. There's a big crossover between Commander and Cube, right? They're both expressions of like, what would I do with Magic if I didn't have to play the game that's given to me by the company? And
Yeah.
how would I take the raw materials and create a new game? And there's a lot of that in the basic design of Magic, right? Magic is always about, unless you're moving into sanctioned play, it's always about like, how do I show myself in the game, and how do I create a world that engenders fun interactions between human beings. So
Yeah, and it's
go.
super cool to do it that way. And it's always really fun, like you said, to see the I think that the coolest thing to see between different cubes and different people's like the kind of how they're doing, what their take is, like how everybody's uniquely expressing it. Because we've got a dozen of this small bar style cubes, for example, and how everyone has approached it is very different. But at the same time, if you have played with someone enough, or like some of the creators, you can kind of pick out why they're doing something. You kind of you see what they're doing and why, and you're like, this is a cube that Dan put together. This is a cube that Patrick put together, and it's just because of the cards and the environment that it creates. And that's kind of cool that a game like this, even though it's a collection of cards that are kind of put together, are still kind of iconic enough that you can associate with some specific person's expression of the game, like how they feel about it. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think there's always this running joke of invitational cards, right? And like, oh, if I won the tournament, he clearly designed this card. I guess some people might be too young to know what invitational cards are, but there used to be tournaments you could win and you could design your own card, more or less. So that's kind of the origin of that term. And there are definitely cards for a given player that you could look at and then totally understand why this card resonates with that person. And you could look at a cube sometimes and see a singular card in it, and then look and know basically who designed it, right?
Oh yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
do you have a card that fits you as far as this is concerned?
Oh my gosh, I don't think I have any one particular card, but I have like this slew of cards. So everybody in the area here, um, kind of just like knows me as the guy who's always going to either play a big 5 color green pile, which I've attempted to do here a lot too,
Mm-hmm.
or play some sort of control deck, especially leaning more towards Grixis. So like everybody always sees like a Nicol Bolas card and just associates it with me. So when we did our big fruitcake, everybody brings a mishmash of cards together thing. My big gag that I did was I found every single card that had Bolas in it, and that was
Nice.
part of my pile. In addition to a bunch of fixing, because I knew no one would bring that.
Yeah, everyone says they love lands, but when they're finally given the reins of the game, what do they do but bring spells?
Right, exactly. When push comes to shove, everyone would rather have their fun spells to cast than the lands that are going to play them. So everyone put together the little 45 card packages, and mine was like 20 lands and 10 rocks, and then maybe some other novel stuff, and then there were like maybe 10 more lands among the other 100 cards.
So in a way, you're saying that your card is chromatically entered.
Yeah, maybe that's what I'm saying. Or
Yeah.
coalition relic.
Right. Yeah, one of those two. So we're going to go over the finals from draft a month ago. Like I said, exactly a month ago. And I don't have Leov0ld's deck list on hand. I guess I could actually bring that up. At least something close to it. But I do have Mikujin's deck here, and it is essentially Izzet control with a few strange additions here. When I say strange, this is not derogatory. It is a 5-color control deck. Yeah, it's just like, hey, I have these lands. Let's cast these spells.
That's pretty much the mentality too. When I was drafting these guys, like bringing Leov0ld, I hadn't seen it. I think I'd seen Leov0ld played once or twice, but it just looked fun. I hadn't used it. I kind of like that Leov0ld is a little bit of graveyard interaction if you can make it work. So having something just to chew stuff up against graveyard strats is nice, and then maybe it does some fun upside stuff.
Yeah,
and then Burrow's just Burrow. Why not if I can run it?
Do you have any thoughts on Master Death, but not Squee? I know this was a while ago now, but yeah.
This like for me, it was mostly just like looking at those. And I actually wanted to run both because I've got like DAC, I've got Carnage Interpreter, I've got Currency. Like I've got ways that I can loot them both away. It ended up just being like I only really list or space in the list because I didn't have like cast or anything to kind of lower the land count I needed. I was looking at it more. It was like I only really have space for one or the other. I went with Master just because I was like, there's a slightly higher upside if I end up wanting to cast it down the road. Like I really like the ETB Surveil. 3 power on the front is really nice if I need to throw it down against like the Boros or like mid-rangey decks. Squee was probably like just fine for that slot too to have in the blind. Like I don't think it ended up mattering a lot, but in a couple games maybe I saved a few points of life. But it was mostly just I like the upside to be able to cast Master as a flexible slot where Squee is just going to be a 1/1.
Squee is so appropriately funny in that you think like I'm gonna get so much value. I'm just gonna discard this card every turn, and like I'll get a free magic card. It's like, dude, it's a 3-mana 1/1.
And I mean, and it's great. And like I said, it's if I had maybe not had like Tidebinder, or maybe I didn't have like one of the 3-mana Planeswalkers, or maybe Chrome Shirt. Like if I was missing one of those other threes, like one other slot that didn't have an exciting card to fill, like I probably would have ran Squee and just had 2 similar effects for that because there's. Again, the deck itself is going to do enough looting. Like sometimes I'm just going to turn 1 or turn 2 Ancestral and maybe lose a card, or maybe I'm going to get Kavu out to start looting there, or one of the like Malcolm type looters or DAC. Like I was definitely not disappointed to have Squee in my pool, and like Master, same idea. It was just like, okay, when push came to shove and I needed to pick just 40 cards, it was one or the other. I was like, well, very minor upside versus just something that's going to do exactly what I wanted to do anyway. So
yeah, the Master works well here, right? Because we have Echo, we have Uro, who's a big player in this deck in general, and the 3/1 is a good body for 3. It's not a great body, but it does attack for 3, which is Squeeze struggles to do anything sometimes.
Yeah, well, and it's nice too because you can that 3 power, like you said, for the body on the front trades well with other stuff, and then you can just get it back to keep doing your looting loops if you need to, or if you need to keep deploying it to block other stuff. Like you mentioned, Echo, there's actually kind of like fun stuff you can do with it, with like Currency Converter, where you can loot it away and hide it under the converter for like the Echo turn, and then put it back in your bin to keep going.
I didn't think about that. That's cool.
Yeah, well, it's one of the I've done that in this cube, but I've also done a couple other cubes as well with Squee, as the Currency Converter hiding cards under it while you're doing like a wheel effect like that.
It's like putting a card up your sleeve, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you got stuff like that, and I mean the upside for Master as well. I think one of the other things that I'd considered was that again the ETB Surveil means I can put a few cards in my bin for powering stuff up like Uro for when I want to get that escape out. Just it's an easy way to get cards where I need them, or like again potentially surveilling like Echo in the bin where Squeeze just gonna sit in my hand until I can start doing stuff.
Yeah, and then it's probably still going to do that, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes I get in discussions where people talk about like the upside of a card is that it can be discarded to Liliana. Uh, and the thought process is that it's a circumstantial card in my black deck that uh, even if I can't do something with it, like the opportunity has passed, duress, for instance,
Hmm.
that I can discard it to Liliana. And it's like, man,
Sure.
that's every magic card. You can discard every
Exactly.
magic. So,
Exactly. And it's like cool when you have like the Squee or the Master where it's like I can discard it with upside, which is awesome. But also like if the only upside is that you can discard it, for free, how much of an upside is that if you don't have a deck that's really going to be abusing that? So
right.
like again, Master provides again that tiny little bit of upside where it's like if I'm casting this as a 3 drop, like it's not really bad. It's not Sentinel levels of efficient or anything, but it's fine. It's going to do its job. It's going to maybe get a little bit of value, and then if I lose it down the road, I can get it back. Whereas we is just 1/1.
Yeah. Before we turn the stream on, we were talking a little bit about Carnage Interpreter and its kind of level of
Yeah,
power with respect to the other new Commander 3 mana red cards, and that this card is actually a lot more interesting to play than some of the other ones. And you
yeah,
can see some of that in this deck, right? Like with Uro and Echo. Like the idea is that you can't just play this card on turn three. I mean, you can, and frequently you will win by just having a 5/5 menace for three, but it is a card that asks you to craft a game plan around it and also build a deck around it. I think that's some of the
yeah. It's not
failings of some of the other cards, right?
exactly that. It's like we were comparing it to cards like Gut and Lelia, the red 3 drops, where it's not just as kind of an automatic decision as hit 3 mana, cast the bird. Like if you're going to Carnage Interpreter on turn 3, like you generally want to make sure, or sooner, like you're generally, like you said, wanting to have a game plan. You want it to be discarding cards that you don't mind being gone, or playing a deck that's fast enough that by the time you're playing it, the cards in your hand are low value, no value, or just empty, and they're just not there. And you're just playing them from your empty hand, so that it's not just kind of a default decision to just jam that guy. And it's been a great card in vintage cube environments where I've seen it. I mentioned as well that I've been seeing it played and tested in some like lower power cube by comparison, some like legacy sort of lists that we have popping up around here. And it's never a card that feels oppressively strong, or like again just very very strong as a cast on 3 when you can be compared to like the Bombardiers and Guts that we were talking about as other 3 drops that are just, if it goes on the board on 3 unanswered, you probably just win.
Right, right. I think one thing that's interesting about this card, and something that I don't see a lot of discussion of with regards to the unique nature of Cube, is that in a singleton format, when you discard a card, unless you have a regrowth effect or something, that's an effect that you will not have again.
Mm-hmm.
So, in constructed, you can play up to four of a card. Right? This is a simple, obvious fact about the game, but when you have to only have one Teferi, and your choice is, do I play Interpreter on 3 and lose access to my Teferi, or do I play Teferi and delay having this 5/5 in play? Then that creates a unique decision space that is truly to the singleton nature of the format.
Yeah, I mean it creates decisions based around opportunity costs, which is much more interesting than just I play a 3 drop and it's done. So like you said, it's without the regrowth style effects. Yeah, losing one of your big iconic cards. So if you really need the 5/5 right now because your opponent's threatened with Sentinel attacks, you don't want them to build up incremental value
Right,
there.
right.
It's now, am I playing my 5/5 to block to try to stop, or and potentially losing one or two other relevant spells in hand, or am I gonna try to slow roll it out to get the most value out of my other cards in addition to this card and potentially fall behind in some other scenario.
I think one of the exciting thing about red card design a lot of the time is that it asks you to take a risk, and it asks you to judge the scenario. Like, when do you go all in?
Mm-hmm.
And because Magic so frequently rewards conservative play, like to have a card that pays you off if you can judge the right moment to be risky. It's a nice place to have a card.
For sure. Well, and it's also just like sometimes you know what you're up against as well. Like with the going and that all in mentality works. Like if I know I'm up against a deck that's fairly creature light, or if I've gone into game 2 or 3 against an opponent, I've seen them be very removal light. Like maybe 5 minutes is something I want to be playing on 3 or 4. At the cost of other cards, just because I know it's going to be, it's something big enough that's going to body most of their stuff, or they're not able to remove it. So it's a little bit dynamic that way, and it's kind of nice.
It does also have a long tail of an effect in that you do have to be careful how you draw the cards, because if you are not, then you will randomly have a 3/3 that can die to a lightning bolt, or you find yourself with too many lands in hand, and then you can't get back down to 1 card.
Yep. And that's come up a few times for me playing it. Not I don't think it comes up in the set of matches we're going to watch, but in practice and seeing it lately and then using it, that very same idea is like, if I draw a land and then I crack one of the clues, it's provided for me because I'm trying to kind of recoup those resources I lost, or look for connection because 5 minutes just isn't good enough on its own on the board. Sometimes you just end up not being able to re-enable that creature being a 5/5 because it's they said a glut of lands, and now I can't get them all out because I don't have any exploration or fast one to just dump them.
Mm-hmm. Well, then let's go ahead and get that match pulled up here. So This was the finals. Mikujin thrashed me in round 2 of this draft. I don't recall what I was playing at this point in time.
I'd have to look back. I don't recall.
But it was. They were pretty good games until I. Well, they were good games regardless.
No, I think you want to bring the stream up here just on me.
Yeah. All right. Let you pull that game up here.
No, I have it up. You just have to.
You're
on the wrong Discord tab.
Okay.
Yeah. You want that watch stream button next to it.
Yeah. Bam.
Here we go. So this was game 1. We're only 3 or 4 turns in, or 3 turns in. Leo is on a really fun and very aggressive Boros pile. I don't think I see it in this match, but I'm pretty sure he's got a Lotus in here somewhere as well. And it's all about like World Leaders Call, just doing lots of work. I believe he's got Bombardment as well. And then we're going to see in a second or two, he's got that Oyer Citadel, which is incredibly good with cards like World Leaders Call. I didn't see that in game. I see it in game 1 where it absolutely thrashed me, but I totally didn't see the interaction when we were kind of thinking about it.
So what happened in this game so far? So
sure.
We exchanged. Can we pull up Can we just start from the beginning?
Sure. Just let me refire it. All that's really happened in there, I believe, is that I deployed a currency converter and then had it ending, and then I think that was pretty much it.
All right. Well, let's see it.
We can see it. We can see it happen live.
There we go. Nice, clean battlefield.
Yeah, right here. So this is again easy keeping hand for me. 2 drops, 3 drops galore, and that's all the deck has. So why not?
This is actually immediately the decision we just talked about on your turn 3 play, right?
Yep, and that's one of the ones, like I'm looking at card trigger. This is actually one of the first times I got to play the card. So looking at it in my hand, I'm like, man, is this a card I want to cast right away, or I want to deploy these other guys? And I'm again blind going into against Leo. I'm not sure what he's on yet, so I'm keeping the hand mostly based on the idea that I've got things to do, and I might be good against an aggressive strat, or I might be against a slow strat. Of course, I just ripped the currency converter to make things look good.
Prospector replaced Simian Spirit Guide in the cube as a form of fast mana that can be leveraged in other directions. It's not as powerful as Simian Spirit Guide, but remains functional as a way to jump ahead of the mana curve.
Yeah, well, it's like that wild Cantor, same idea, right? Like having it there just to bump up. It's cool as well because every now and again you get like little goblin synergies. And when I say synergies, I mean sometimes there's just 2 or 3 other goblins in the cube that you don't think about being there, and occasionally it's it's a Rite of Flame more than it is just a bank 1 type of thing.
There are turn one things you can do with Leov0ld, but they
Yeah.
require some serious power.
Yeah, so down comes the War Leader's Call. I'm already kind of like thinking about how I have to fight that versus anything else. And this play right here might have been bad. I'm thinking like pile Leo's mana by bouncing the call, and I don't think anything of getting rid of Teferi. But it might have been right to bounce the Prospector itself there too.
The
Just
downside to
one damage.
bouncing the Prospector, though, is that if you do so, he can sack the Prospector and you don't draw a card.
Yep, exactly. Well, and that might have been one of the reasons I didn't. But I'm thinking like this ties up mana better. I don't have to worry about it. And I've got plenty of other action in my hand to be playing that I'm not worried about. What am I going to do without Teferi?
Yeah, I mean, you got your value out of it. Essentially, you traded mana for neutral and then drew a card. So
Exactly. And then Spell Spear here is also a card that I love playing, and I'm just very excited to get to draft and play with.
it's
The
very
deck I don't
good.
think has it's such a good card. I don't think I flip it here or anything like that, but man, the double prowess side, I just love that card so much.
Any thoughts on discarding the Shark versus the Interpreter?
So Shark versus Interpreter for me, I think was more I was looking at my hand, and most of the cards I have are going to be kind of reactive. Like I'm looking for a Bolt to remove something, or Mana Drain to hold up and react to something else. So Shark, I'm thinking, is not really getting tons of value, and I'm starting to think I want to be a little more proactive. So Carnage Interpreter is going to leave me open to like doing that if I want to. And in my mind, I'm thinking this sequence right now is like, if all he's got is Swift Prospector next turn, I'm probably just going to bolt it, slam Carnage Interpreter on land, and not worry about losing the Mana Drain.
Yeah.
Because again, at this point in time, I'm thinking I'm the aggressor because I'm the one blinking away at his life total a lot more than he is at mine. Well, that's going to change pretty quick.
Yeah, we'll see that turn around very quickly.
Yeah, so
Now
just build
comes the
up this.
Lotus. Yeah, this is a vintage cube.
Yeah, and this is where I'm just like, oh, I'm dead. Am I? Like I'm at 17, think I'm in a pretty good spot here, and down comes Oyer, which is now turning all those War Leaders calls into lava hexes, which I didn't realize right away. At first, I'm thinking, oh, he's going to plink me for 1 or 2 damage. It's going to be fine. And then I think it's when I'm sitting here actually playing it, I realize it. Like when I untap, I'm like, okay, this is fine. Like I'm going to be at 13, 14, and I untap, and I'm going to discard Master of Death, and I'm like, wait a minute, like why am I at 2 life? And then it took me a second to piece together the Oyer wall and War Leaders.
Yeah, so
interaction.
this is causing War Leaders to deal 5 damage anytime a creature comes into play. Which no longer, that's just a tap land now.
Yeah, and here comes the Carnage Interpreter, because I'm like, well, I need a block. I don't have a no block scenario.
Yeah, it doesn't. The Usher boasts.
This is it. This is where it is.
Yeah.
So this is where I play Carnage Interpreter, and I see, hey, well, I'm at 2 life, and that's when I pieced together what was happening and realizing, like, oh, Usher's just gonna swing, make a 1/1, and I'm gonna die. So the game is over.
Yeah, pretty quick match here.
Oh yeah, very quick. The other 2 games though are very, very long and grindy, and some of the most fun Magic I've played in a hot minute. Here, we'll get these ones up. Is the stream still up for it? No, weird. It's still showing me a stream, but interesting.
Whoa, hello.
I'll put it back up. It's just Discord being weird.
Right, there we go.
There we go.
All right,
So
game 2. You have the benefit of being on the play.
Yeah, which is, I mean, where this deck wants to be. There's so much stuff this deck can do. So this was a fun keep. I was a little bit nervous. I'm thinking, like, I do need to draw, like, green if I want Cobweb, but at the very least I can play the Master. I'm thinking, if nothing else, it'll surveil me into lands. And then I top off the Leov0ld, which again, part I haven't played with yet at this point, but had seen played and was excited to try it out.
2/3 body is nice here, considering we saw Usher the Fallen. This Prospector attack is kind of, surely nothing's going on here.
there wasn't. I probably should have blocked. I'm not sure if there was a shock in hand or whatever, but it didn't really make a difference. And we get the DAC rolling, and DAC rolling here is just because I've got the master in hand. I'm like, well,
Right.
if Prospector's the only threat, like I may as well just start getting all the value I can. And then DAC immediately dies.
So here we see
I
the
hear those-
value of playing Master Death, right?
Yep, and that's what we were talking about before when looking at it, is like sometimes just playing as a 3/1 body is fine. It can gum things up for me. I think I popped this on the Usher deck combat. I'm waiting to see if Leo has like a hasty threat because I haven't
Right.
seen what else their deck can do. It's Stoneforge.
Seal removal could be good here if they have Cauldra or Batterskull, but reveals Skullclamp instead.
Yeah.
Skullclamp pretty powerful on this board. At this point, though,
Yeah.
deploying this 5 minutes fairy.
5 mana to bury, start making some guys. Well, and I think the seal I'm holding off here because I'm waiting for the clamp to come down so that I can bounce the first creature it tries to equip on.
Oh.
But again, immediately get blown out.
Oh, I think you just crashed. There we go. No, that's me.
No,
All right, we're good. We're good.
Sure.
Yeah.
If you missed, the only thing that happened was that Fury
Oh, we
killed
saw
my
that.
stuff, and then I sealed away the Usher so that we couldn't get a token into a Skullclamp situation happening.
This is a dire situation, my friend.
I know. I can't remember how I get out of it. It's been long enough that even the game is a mystery to me.
If we draw a land here, we do get the Interpreter. Not that land though.
No, but I think I do Teferi bounce looking for another land. Don't find it, but I do find that.
So far, Leov0ld has dispatched 3 Planeswalkers.
Yep. Well, I mean, and that's the fun thing. Like those Planeswalkers. I mean, they've gained me like 5 or 6 life at this point in the game, so it's not nothing, especially against Leo's gigantic board and threat of massive value from Skullclamp. Oh, there's Lotus.
I'm just gonna put this here. It's interesting that the creatures that he has are comparatively weak, right? And yet they have done a good job with the combination of these really powerful spells, right?
Yep, exactly. Got other spells that are supporting them, getting in there, doing very relevant things. On this, I know where this game goes here. Now I'm remembering it. It's fun. We're gonna get to see some cards do things that are disgusting.
So here we get to Tidebind the Skullclamp.
Yeah, shut Skullclamp off, and that felt so good. Kill your guy, and then we get to untap with Master of Death, Burst Lightning, Carnage Interpreter. Like again, the logic in bringing it back here is if I draw untap land, I'm just deploying my one. And the downside being, I might just get to pitch Master of Death away is fine.
Right. We'll get this card back here.
Exactly.
Growth protecting the Mori Marauder versus the Burst Lightning.
Yeah, and that was like not really something I get to play around because there's no situation where I get to hold the Burst Lightning and do it on Leo's turn because it's.
Well, you don't want to do it anyway. Right?
Exactly right, because the Carnage Interpreter is coming down. Exactly, and I don't want to do it on the Double Striker anyways.
Big damage.
So long. I think I trade the Carnage Interpreter right here for it. I just don't want Leo getting free cards. And again, it's Carnage Interpreter is already just giving me a bunch of value and clues, so why not?
Yeah, Stoneforge fails to find there. Nothing left to get.
Yeah, and here we go. This is where Surveil. I probably should have put the Burrow in my bin. I could have just rusted right away. But in my mind, I'm thinking, well, Leo's sitting on 1 card, hasn't done anything scary with Stoneforge. I can just hold up Crack Clue and Mana Drain.
Oh, that's
which
right.
is
It's
which is
moved down to
which is why I'm doing it this way, because I've got no, I don't have Carnage Interpreter to worry about anymore, right? So this is just
right.
mana drain can come to hand, and then I can bring Uro in to get as much value out of Uro as I possibly can. So Uro comes down, plays me a land, and I think at this point I just get to go like, well, let's bring Uro back and hold up mana drain. Oh, got Ancestral first for value. Do I just not play the mana drain? Well, it's fine too. Or the Uro rather.
There's plenty of time left in this game.
Well, and that might have been the line I'm thinking of here, right? It's like I'm not really pressed to do stuff. The only way to lose is to have something get in under the mana drain.
Leov0ld out of cards here.
Yeah, Leo's running out, and I've got clue tokens to crack. I've got converter to crack. Fairy Mastermind to come to. Like I'm just sitting on piles of value, and Uro as well. Like and it's going to be hard. I think this is just where the game kind of comes back for me. Although I am notably on like 7 cards in library at this point. Oh, that Saloon that came in from the sideboard, just wanting another body against Leo's deck, looking like it was a little bit more play to the board. I think I actually sided out for game 3 because I see more of Leo's deck, and it looks more combo-y, like 1/1s, just trying to get all the value and find his like war leaders bits and pieces.
When you get in positions like this and your opponent can chump, Uro is, and the same will be true for Svelu. Like, it gets to a point you can no longer attack.
Yep. Well, and so I'm not worried too much about that because I know in my deck, hiding away somewhere, I've got that Echo Beyonds to recycle. So I'm thinking like, I'm gonna keep drawing cards. I don't care. I haven't seen ways for Leov0ld to interact with my graveyard or counter spells. So I'm like, if I get to the Echo, we'll just fire it off and be fine. But I am thinking very much the same thing. I'm like, well, how many cards can I actually draw right now with these things? So I don't want to go too crazy. But there's the Echo and the Dread Horde.
We'll go down.
And then I think the other card I'm still looking for too is I know I've got a Bolt floating around in my last 3, so I'm fishing for it. But it's my last card if memory serves. Yeah.
This is right about where I tuned in on the stream and noticed.
Yeah.
Hey, he only has one card left.
Right. It probably looks a little bit dire if you're not sitting here with the benefit of seeing the hand. So we converter, and I think I get to pitch the Echo so that I can cast it for cheap. Yeah. We go Bolt to the Dome and then shuffle because we're thinking, well, if I can just find the Bolt again.
It's like Snapcaster Mage. It's just a little harder.
Exactly, it's an expensive Snapcaster. But my deck is also very small. Like I said, even with the shuffle, I've got 3 cards in my
3 cards
right away, and I just rip through the whole library to find the Bolt again, and it's a last card again.
So we can Teferi bounce something here, draw a card.
Exactly. Teferi bounce anything, draw my last card. There we go. Boom. And Leo just fires it off. Knows I've got because he knows I've got the Bolt. So he's probably assuming I'm digging for that. That's good. But then we'll do game 3 here. And it's another game that plays out, I think, very similar to match 2.
This game has like 3 and 4 back and forths that just look like the game is over.
Game 3 is the really back and forth one that I really love. Like game 2, game 1 both were a little bit more. Didn't really look like there was quite as much tension in them, but this one definitely is. So the Master of Death I'm pitching there because I'm thinking that I want to have mana access. I need colors, white pips. And I'm kind of thinking with the idea that I'm probably going to go Converter, hold up, mana drain on 2, and if I pitch, a series of cards away with the Interpreter while the Converter's on board,
Right.
it would be not that bad.
Oh, so that's when things get weird. Oh, yeah.
So it's weird because Leo skips through it, but we'll see in a turn or two here. That actually ends up being a good thing. So Leo accidentally, meant to recast it, but ends up drawing something here. I think a 2 or a 3 drop. And he deploys the Usher, which I'm like, well, let's just mana drain it. I'll get the mana up to try to dump the rest of my hand. But then has like Lotus. Yeah, there we go. The Lotus comes out. And into like scary cards. So it's like, well, if I had saved it, I'd have been cashing in on a little bit more action.
Yeah, this Inspector going to be at least a 2/3 next turn, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's scary. Oh, and this was a hard decision too. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to pitch, but I ended up going, They're thinking I can make, like at the very least, I can make some bodies to try to get in the way of Inspector, try and keep Dak alive to keep getting my loot on, try and find answers. And there's Leo's Relic to answer me.
Yeah.
My fun wheel strats later. But Leo's hand is mostly deployed at this point, which is where I'm starting to feel like there's a little bit more room for me to get back in the game.
Yeah, we get one of these free rogues here.
Exactly. And that was why I was like not disappointed by playing some of that stuff out, as I'm thinking Dak is going to find me stuff to do if I can just keep him alive long enough.
Bunch of lands.
Mm-hmm.
But it does represent the ability to cast both of these spells right now, actually. I don't know if that's what we end up doing.
And I think I do. Yeah, I think I don't get to do that exactly. Leo does that, which is probably seeing like the potential upside mana and just wanting to cantrip into more stuff for himself since he's low. But I just fire off Carnage Tyrant. Don't feel bad about it again. One more card to make another rogue, and now I can start trying to present a little bit more threat on my side of the board. And Pia's coming down just a turn too late to be too excited.
Yeah. This is an interesting attack. It almost forces you to...
Yeah, so both of these creatures are coming in at Dak, and my assumption here is that Leo's got some sort of instant speed interaction. Like, I'm thinking the attack is in my head, like, oh, we're trying to set up to kill my Carnage Interpreter and kill Dak, so I block to try to eat the Light Scribe.
So we can put the counter from the showdown on that, and then the Magecraft ends up pumping the team.
So I end up trading no matter what, but this is a good way to show like I don't get blown out instead. Like no spell kills me; it kills my Carnage Interpreter on the Inspector instead, right? So I still keep Dak protected a bit. And it's kind of battling through top decks here.
This was... yeah.
Oyer comes down. I'm wondering how I can get out of this. None of this really looks appealing yet.
This Phalian shut off from being a card advantage engine here by O'Hare, yeah. And also not a great blocker at this point.
Yep. Well, exactly. There's and Oyer gets in there too. Everything's coming at Dak, I believe. Like again, Leo's just trying to shut off my potential out to try to dig through my deck and get back in the game. And I'm thinking, well, Dak's gonna die no matter what I do, so I'll just take the eat. And I think Leo does like there's something coming here like Armageddon or something. Yeah. There's something that scares the crap out of me. I'm like, well, so there's the Geddon. And I'm thinking, well, there's no hope, but and this is where the game gets really great. So I top deck the Undercity Sewers and surveil the recall into my bin. And so So Leo tapped out. I'm thinking like, well, I get to drop 4 cards to get back in the game soon. I don't know why I don't attack here.
Oh, you kept it on top.
Oh, right.
But attack was failing, yeah.
Yeah, I could have attacked with Saloon since I'm not going to be blocking with Saloon. Oh, maybe I do. I do the double block to eat Oyer.
That makes sense, yeah.
Leo gets a land out of it. Yeah, and
Now
gets excited. You fool, but I get to draw 6. So I'm feeling pretty good about my position after. I'm still staring down a 4 or 5. Like my Dreadhorns not really gonna have opportunity to attack, or at least race well. So I'm just trying to search for the way back in. War Leader's Call comes down. I'm just excited that I don't have Oyer still to deal with. Burrow doing his best to keep me in.
Yeah, Novice Inspector just outside of range of the Burst Lightning off of the Arcus.
Yep. And I was getting really excited at one point looking at Tidebinder, thinking about countering War Leader's Call, but then I was very disappointed when I rewrote the card and it doesn't shut off enchantments.
Saves the damage, that's about it.
Yep.
Here comes the Skull Clamp. But we have this certain Tidebinder card.
We do, but Clamp is still, again, it's looking like lots of damage. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how I can, again, get back in and close it out because, things look scary. Burrow is the big scary card, though, that I'm happy to
This is
do a bunch of stuff.
Shut off most attacks here.
It's not going to shut off all the attacks, but it's like enough that I don't have to. So I think Leo swings in with the Inspector, and if memory serves, I don't block it, or I might block it with the Dreadhorde. Like in my mind, I'm thinking I can just.
Yeah, don't let him
we'll see
cards.
if I trade. Well, that was it. Like I'm trying to think of how I could let Leo not draw cards. Yeah, so I block with Dreadhorde instead of Burrow because I'm thinking, well, next turn I can block and Tidebinder the Clamp again to try to shut off the other route back in. Moves the Clamp. I'll crack my clue, and I might even proactively, just get the attack in. I don't even know if I think I just wait for the block to try to eat it and don't do anything fancy or tricky with bolts to try to get damage in. And then just like game 1, get that fun Tidebinder little Clamp in is imperative.
Yeah, it's like a blue disenchant, really.
Blue Disenchanted, it's powering up the Cradle here too, which is nice. Unfortunately, I can't do double spell since both of these are requiring red and I've only got 1 red pip up. But I think Clue's fine.
Yeah, you do only have 3 cards left.
Yep, and I'm looking again at that. I'm looking at that Echo in hand, thinking about how I need to start looping stuff again. And I know that Leo doesn't have that relic anymore, so I'm not worried as long as I can start making it happen.
There is an interesting scenario here. Unfortunately, the haste doesn't last through the turn.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that you only have 3 cards, giving Lauren haste is a bit scary because of this, right?
Yeah.
The potential.
Well, and Leo does right away and draws the card with it. And it's doing double duty, right? Like Lauren's helping Leo find action, but also, like you noted, I've only got a couple cards left, so it's a lot harder for me to want to be doing everything. So I don't crack the clue there just because I'm worried about going to 1 and not having Uro be able to attack.
Right.
and then we just get Bolt Burst. So these cards don't even end up mattering. Here we go right to face, but it's definitely that could have gone either way multiple times, which is so much fun.
Yeah, I remember watching the Armageddon. Like, oh my god.
Yeah, when that Armageddon came down, I was like, oh no, like how do I even get out of this now? But again, the finding the recall, like run away for Dreadheart is just so clutch. And then I got lucky as well because Leo, I mean, after the Armageddon happens, like we can see Leo's got like 5 plans back on board. Like there were several draws in there where he ended up just getting stuck on drawing lands because he was after the Geddon down to 2 cards in hand too. So I mean, me reloading with 6 cards mattered a lot compared to Leo just trying to close the game out quickly with that a little bit, and then Earl ballooned me up like 9 points of life or something like that. So I would have been already dead if had that not been the case. So it was again a very fun game with a lot of tension and a lot of points because even a few points early in the game, if I just miss a land draw, I'd probably get run over.
Yeah, for sure.
By some of his early plays.
I think there's an argument to say like if the Ancestral is 1 turn later, you probably lose.
Oh yeah, that too. Like absolutely. If that Ancestral, like if I surveil and see just another land, like I'm probably keeping another land because I just got Geddoned. But what am I doing? I'm not really advancing the game. Like it's me sitting there with an empty hand and suddenly going from empty hand to 6 cards was definitely what mattered. It gave me more options and also made sure that I had those land plays like Leo sitting there with a 5/6 Inspector and can easily just like abyss me every turn if I'm not playing stuff to try to get there to build my board back up because it was the Dreadhorde and Svalun versus 5/6 Inspector and Oyer and then having to trade for one when I could and then try to build up. It's just it was a scary position to be in, but man, it was again a fun game going down to 0 cards twice and just having that back and forth where it worked out. So it was a lot of fun in the grind there. Yeah. And then I think after the match ends up happening here, Leo and I were chatting a bunch because he was like, man, it was really funny in game 2 where that Teferi, the Teferi bounce Usher or the Seal bounce Usher into mana drain, and Usher just ended up him forgetting to recast Usher of the Fall.
Right.
Was like just subtly the best thing that could have happened. Actually, might have been even in this game.
It was this game. It was the beginning of this game.
Yeah, right. Where Usher not getting replayed was like actually the best scenario by accident. But it was super fun. Can't complain.
Yeah.
But it's always satisfying when you get a game like this because like you don't feel bad being on either side whether you win or lose because like the game was just lots of back and forth, lots of interaction, and lots of tension throughout the game in thinking that and feeling that it could go either way at any moment.
Yeah, I think it's possible for Magic to be a game that feels fair and also powerful at the same time. And like, there's a lot of things that happen in the course of this particular game that were wildly broken, right? And yet it's a very tight game.
Exactly right, and you look at that in the course of the whole match, even like in match 1. Getting domed for 15 out of nowhere is not something that anyone would think is like fair in big air quotes here, but like it's the nature of the game. Sometimes you assemble the right combo or the pieces, or whatever, and it's cool to see. Like when that happened to me, I wasn't sitting there thinking like, "Oh wow, this is wildly broken and bad." I was sitting there thinking like, "I'm going to deploy my stuff." I cast my Carnage Interpreter and then go like, "Wait a minute, why am I at 2?" And be like, "Oh my gosh, like, this is so cool that it got assembled." And I'm like, "Well, we've got to go to the next match or game because I'm not getting this one."
Well, that also changes the nature of the future games in the match, right? Because then you look at different cards, right? Like, do I bring in... I don't know if you have any disenchants here, but like, especially in your Izzet deck, but your target then becomes like, can I save this seal of removal to bounce the O'Hare in response to the War Leader's Call trigger? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it just changes the way you play the game for the course of the match, really.
Yeah, and when O'Hare got played on this last game here, I was so excited when I got the opportunity to trade with it because the whole time I was thinking like, well, once I see it get cast, I'm worried about War Leader's Call coming down. And like, fortunately, they did not sync up on timing, so I have to worry about it.
Right.
But like you said, now I'm thinking about like how I have to play around Oyer or take opportunities to trade down for Oyer, even if I need to, or trade up to Oyer if I can, just to prevent that combo from happening because, like, again, in that same scenario where I've got two smaller creatures against two big creatures and no lands on the battlefield, like, I really need to just like cut off every avenue I can for Leo to kind of spike me out of nowhere. And sometimes that means making trades you don't want to make, but just to get him off the board. And like Leo was saying, like he was excited for the trade to happen because it meant that he got a land out of the deal, helping recover after that Armageddon.
It'd be interesting, like if his deck had Fire Blast, for instance. So you could then flip the mana. Is it 4 damage to flip back over? It's 4, right? Yeah.
It's I think it's 4.
Yeah. So you can float the mana and then Fire Blast and then flip it back over, get the 4/4. Yeah.
Yep. Well, and I mean, there's probably I haven't seen too much burn to the face out of Leo's deck. Like I have the Bolt, I have the Burst Lightning. I don't know if he had the Chain Lightning. I know I didn't. But we didn't see that out of him. So the only way that this is flipping in my head, again, outside of like the Fire Blast I haven't seen, is kind of already involving War Leader's Call. So if I'm getting to that point, I'm probably just dead anyways.
Right.
But yeah, it's a really cool and interesting state that like Oyer can be seen as like a land resource that you don't find trading away, when you've got like an Armageddon plan. Like, well, now my creatures either just like if the floor is that my creature will trade and I get a land after the Armageddon, great. And the ceiling is just you keep taking 4 a turn until you're dead. That's fine too. Right. So it's great. I think the only thing I was disappointed with in this match was that I didn't get to do anything with Leov0ld. It was a card I've seen played maybe 2 or 3 times prior to that, actually, by a couple other folks in this cube, possibly maybe you and I think in one match even. And I've been impressed with it. Like it's the body for 2/3 for 2 has been a decent enough body even in like this sort of environment where doesn't think it's really off. But I've been pleasantly surprised with the exile clause on it. Like it's just actually been good.
There needs to be a good enough amount of graveyard interaction in these cubes because there's so much use for it. Even against you, for instance, like that.
Exactly. I was just going to point to my stack of cards over here.
Right. I would rather play with those cards because they make the game exciting, but then to make there some element of risk involved in using them, right? Like.
Well, that's an interesting point because like. So Dan and I over here, we have a small bar cube that we've assembled that's very much like focused on graveyard synergies and graveyard usage as a resource in many ways. And one of the things that we came into that when we were building with was like, well, how do we let players interact with the graveyard without making it feel like we're kind of defeating the entire purpose for the design, right? So we didn't want to have cards like a Progenitus where anybody at any point can just be like, well, the whole graveyard is now blanked. So the deck that really went all in on using the cards as a resource just gets blanked by a 1 mana spell every time. And one of the things we ended up settling on was a lot of cards that were like the Kavu, the Leov0ld, like Sun Gold Sentinel types of things, like things where you're going to get to eat one card. It's going to be the card you want to eat, but there's risk involved. Like you got to send your creature into the red zone, or maybe it's just a one shot, kill one card, kind of cling to dust style of effect, where we still want players to have options. We still want them to feel like they have some kind of agency in interacting with their opponent's plan involving the graveyard, but not just rest in peace. Graveyards don't matter anymore.
Right. You don't want that. There's always like each given zone needs to have the equal resisting force to what's going into it, right? So like if players can go wide really easily, then there needs to be a sweeper. If there needs to be if there's a lot of stuff on the stack like spell-based combos, and there should be some answer to that. If you have a lot of graveyard in action, and you can, the big thing to me is if you can lose from a single turn from 20 from the graveyard, then there needs to be reciprocal force. There needs to be like Tormod's Crypt or Soulguide Lantern, Relic of Progenitus.
Yep.
So this is all a question of balance. One thing that could be done is you could look at the sets in which the graveyard, any given thing is done, right? So in this discussion, it's graveyards. You can look at a set where the graveyards have been part of the gameplay and then see what did wizards do. And
they made Sun Gold Sentinel, they made Graveyard Trespasser, they made all those cards from that set. I can't think of them at the moment, but there's like
So the Innistrad, yeah.
like Rotting Reunion, right? And those are good cards. Rotting Reunion is actually a really interesting card in these graveyard sets because it functions kind of as a burn spell. It is a flashback graveyard value card that is also a graveyard interaction card. So Wizards probably has a lot of answers they've already worked out for you if you're looking at building something that is a little non-traditional.
Yeah, and that's kind of like where we go with a lot of stuff. So when we're building a lot of our stuff in the community, whether it's just us from the ground up, or we're building something with a specific like theme or goal for design in mind, that's kind of one of the things we like to do. Is we like to look at what formats have already existed like that in terms of like Wizards, like limited constructed formats. When we talk about graveyard stuff, you were referring back to the Innistrad set that did a lot of that stuff with Sun Gold and Graveyard Trespasser. But then we'll also look at like other cubes that we can find, like what other cubes have we seen that have asked similar questions, and what answers did they come up with, or how did they find it, and what kind of things or lessons did maybe they learned. Like we've talked to a few designers and found out like what were you happy with, what worked well for you, and what didn't, and whether it was like something that they felt personally didn't work, or maybe players, because sometimes as designers putting cubes together, we get really cool ideas going on in our head. We put things together and we think, oh, this is such a cool piece that I've made for our players. But it's a different story when people are drafting it, because maybe one of those really cool packages you put together has one card that's just standing out as a good card for any package or any deck that you want it. And by having every deck now want that card, you maybe take it away from this cool package you made. And so people end up feeling bad when they try to draft something, or when they see this card and can't put it together. Right. And so that was one of the feedback we got right away with our graveyard design. Was when we initially did it, we were thinking like, well, we want safety valves to be on there. We had like the Tormod's Crypts, the Relics, and right away. And again, one of the pieces of feedback we got almost immediately was it felt like cards were just playing to use your graveyard as a resource or as like an alternate hand, kind of as it can happen. Didn't feel like it was viable, because people would just get blanked by one single nuke the graveyard effect, and then their game plan was down. Especially because with a lot of these bar cube environments, or that we call them, is we design them to be kind of lower power level, so there's less independently strong cards. And so usually if you're trying to build this graveyard critical mass to get stuff out of it, it's cost you 2 or 3 or 4 cards in a few turns. Right. And so to have that all just go gone, well, it feels real bad. So we pulled it back to a lot of red zone and sorcery speed interaction with the graveyard if you're going to get multiple effects, and that really made things feel better. It made, again, there's a tension on whether or not a player wants to cast a spell that's going to get cards in the graveyard right now or later, and then again that same tension on like whether I, with my sorcery speed piece of interaction, want to remove 1 or 2 of those cards right now that I can see that might be a problem, or whether I want to deploy my own threats and think, well, maybe they don't have the answer or the way to use that card immediately. And so it's been a lot healthier for it. But that's just, again, our specific environment. If you get to a place like, again, a vintage cube environment where things can go a lot harder, a lot faster, the level of quality, I guess, in terms of interaction, as well as the volume, changes a lot.
I think one thing that is difficult when you are putting cards together is it's really easy to see linear plans winning. You can look at the deck list and say this is what it does. It's much harder to envision the opposite, which is how do I make a format where this is reasonably beatable in an exciting way? And because that is revealed by playing the game, whereas you can look at a deck and see how it wins.
Exactly.
You can see, like, if this is not opposed, here's how I win. But the opposition of it, it's tough to look at a control deck, or it's tough to look at... it's just the nature of interactive cards. When you put them in a deck list, what they're doing is fundamentally missing something. So, like, if all my cards exist in a list with respect to each other, then it's really easy to see what's happening. But if, like, 4 or 5 of the cards in my deck gain value through some variable that's not present, meaning my opponent's cards, I can't really judge how well that's working.
Yeah, well, that's the managing question that people always ask when they see that from a cube, right? Like if a cube is curving out, you're playing kind of like a Bond style mana cube where you're looking at cards that cost 1, 2, 3 and not really anything out there. how much better than Mana Leak is Mana Drain? I mean, Mana Drain's still better. Like, I'm not gonna say that, but it's a far cry different from Mana Drain in a vintage environment where somebody might fast mana out a 7 or 8 or 9 drop, and Mana Drain is now giving me a multitude of options with this extra mana.
Yeah, that card has had a fall from grace for sure.
Exactly.
Even in vintage cube environments, it's like a lot of your best threats cost 1 mana. So you're gonna mana drain Ragavan.
Exactly, right. And so it's a big question there, even in vintage for sure. And it's unfortunate because Drain is one of those cards where, like you mentioned, it's a piece of interaction. It's kind of a piece of power that you're seeing in your hand that's really dependent on what your opponent's playing. It's what you get to interact with determines how good that is. And then it kind of has its own weird little loop contained in that, is because not only are you worried about how good the thing you're countering is to get that value, you have to look at, like, do I have anything in my hand that I get to use all that mana on? Or is it just, because so many times in Vintage Cube I see Mana Drain just be counterspell because my opponent hasn't had anything to use the mana on, or they've only got 1 or 2 pips of colorless mana, and it's not enough to cast their big control 4 or 5 drop.
Yeah, it is counterspell far more often than it's Black Lotus.
Yeah.
Like probably 9 to 1 a lot of the time. Well, thanks for hanging out with me this morning. I'm glad we got to go over those matches. I've been meaning to for a couple weeks at this point. So.
Oh, I know. I'm happy to go over it. It's always fun to talk to you because it's interesting to get different insight and perspectives on seeing how everybody sees the game, and then also, in even just a match like that, seeing what kind of considerations everyone's got or thinking of when they see certain cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll get back to drafting either Wednesday or Thursday, and then OTJ comes out soon. Maybe we'll take some kind of other cube break in the meantime. But
OTJ coming is going to have a lot of weird, fun implications for cubes. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. I'm really excited about all the spree cards coming out. I know they are a lot of overcuts. Yeah. So I love in cube environments those kind of modal build your own confluence style cards, because I'm not sad to draw a spree card very late in the game where I can dump all the mana into it and do all sorts of things.
They also have weird implications with Spellseeker and Micromancer, which is cool.
Yeah, they do. Very excited. Anyways, you have a good rest of your weekend, and
all right.
Happy cubing. I'm sure we'll get back to it.
Let's do it. All right. Thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, you bet. Take care, man.
Yep. See you later.